Oh, hey guys. So for today's videos, this video rather, not today's. We've already had another one today. For this video, I'll be going through the PPTs majorly, and after going through the PPTs, like I think I'll go through three PPTs. Totally, we have five. I think. Just let me open up the LMS page. I want to just check how many PPTs we have. Um, I plan on going through three no matter what in this video, and also within those three, I won't be covering one topic majorly. So this is one, two, three, four, five. So I'll be going through end-to-end linear regression classification. Let me just see what is there in logistic regression once. Okay, it's around 12 slides and it's basically about the sigmoid function by itself. That's it. Okay, so I guess I can go through this one also. So we can go through the logistic regression function also. So let's just put this over here and then that makes sense. Okay, logistic regression. Okay, cool. So we'll go through four of these. Everything except for SVM will be going through that. And one topic I won't be covering is regularization. Okay, so I don't know what how to explain regularization because I don't even know what the fuck it is. I did not listen to class or I didn't come to class, so I don't know jack shit. But in general, I think what it does is it makes sure that um, all of your data is in and around the same range, and it regularizes it so that gradient descent can perform better, and when there are multiple parameters. Okay, so this is to make sure that the for example, instead of having like the median house price will be in and around $500,000, right? Instead of doing that, it'll regularize it between 0 to 1. I think that's what it does. So I'll try to see what it does. I don't know. I need to learn from the book by itself. But otherwise, other than this, we'll be going through end-to-end machine learning, logistic regression, then classification. Classification, most of it was covered in the previous video, so we'll be going through classification and finally regression, which is a 60-page PPT. So the fuck, you know what, never mind, let's just go the old-fashioned way. Okay, so I think this is regression. Shouldn't be a pain. It should be fine. Major thing always, for everything, try to draw as many figures as you can. If you can draw with pen also, it's fine. Just try to draw figures. Okay, so whenever I need to explain something via notes, I'll be shifting to the other camera. Yeah, this one over here. So I'll be shifting to this camera over here and I'll be writing whatever notes need to be written, and I'll be switching off my display capture during that time. Okay, so that's it with respect to what's the agenda for today's or rather this video. So let's go through this PPT. This shouldn't take long. So end-to-end machine learning project. So the main steps of a machine learning project are to look at the big picture, to get the data, then to discover and visualize the data to gain insights, prepare the data for machine learning algorithms, select a model and train it, fine tune your model, present your solution, and launch, monitor, and maintain your system. Cool. Let's go through these step by step. I'll first give a general insight as to what each one means. So looking at the big picture, means trying to get a problem statement. So recently, this weekend, I took up a problem which was trying to predict whether if somebody should get a loan or not. It's a pretty famous problem. I just wanted to test it out. So it just predicts whether if somebody needs to get a loan or not. Okay, so we're going to go through the data by itself. So the problem by itself is to use their sex, their age, their credit amount, and their property, how many cars they have, their education level, all of that to predict whether if I need to give them a loan or not. So that's the big picture. Over here, you decide your input parameters and your output parameters. So your input parameters would be all of that, age, sex, and everything, and your target variable or your output will be good loan or bad loan. So it's a binary classification. Okay, So that's the data that you have. In case the data, whenever you import it, so whenever I read the data, I read it from like the UCI machine learning repository. I think that's also covered in the end-to-end machine learning project. So you know what, let's just go through it step by step after that. So you get the data, then you discover, visualize the data to gain insights. So what you do is, after you get the data, it's generally unclean and it's super shitty. Okay. Then you discover and visualize the data to gain insights. So you clean the data into two parts. First, preparing the data for machine learning algorithms. So you do that in the pre-processing part. Another pre-processing step is to give it names, give it parameters, and make it like male, sex, female, renaming the columns, all that kind of shit. You do that in pre-processing, and then you visualize the data. So you draw graphs, and then you explore the data. Then you select a model like linear regression, you select a model like random forests or logistic regression, that kind of shit, and then you predict. Okay. Then you fine tune your model. So once you train it, you fine tune your model means there will be various parameters. So in k nearest neighbors, there is a parameter that takes the number of neighbors it needs to take to decide which cluster it falls into. So you need to decide which n value you need to take. Then you present your solution. This is done by using evaluation metrics like RMSE, root mean square error, R squared, mean absolute error. It uses these to present how good or how bad our data has done. Okay. Then you launch, monitor, and maintain your system. So the linear regressor which you have, you're going to save it into a file and you're going to give it to the bank. So in my German credit data set, I'm going to save it, give it to a bank. The bank is going to input all of the data in that, and it'll predict whether if it's good or not as things keep growing. So let's say in the future, right now, let's say in the future, there's another thing like Mars. Okay, if you're from Mars, you have bad credit. If you're from Earth, you have good credit. It's a good loan. So I need to add another feature saying planet of origin. Okay, cool. Now the first, so we've done the first part. Okay, which is with respect to my project, I'm gonna go. Okay, which is trying to predict whether if I should approve the loan for somebody or not, and now I need to get the data. Okay, so the data can be brought from UCI machine learning repository, Kaggle datasets, Amazon AWS datasets, or from the portals, these data portals. You know what, let's just open them. I think so from these data portals you can get the data. Okay, Open Data Monitor allows you to better understand data and all this kind of shit. Okay, then another place you can do is Wikipedia's list of machine. So if you want to know where the data is, you can ask it in Quora.com, or you can ask it at a subreddit, or you can go to Wikipedia's list of machine learning data sets where they're available and everything. Okay, so first getting the data. Okay, so what I did is I went to UCI machine learning repository, and then I searched for the German credit data set, and I got this link. Okay, now in this link, this is all there is. Okay, let's go to parent directory. How does it look? Okay, so it doesn't look that great, but it's okay. Okay, so in the UCI machine learning, just give me a second. Yeah, in the UCI machine learning, just give me one last second. Yeah, in the UCI machine learning database, what happens is this is how it looks like, and this is the data that I want, the German underscore data. Okay, but after along with that, I need to install this German underscore doc, which has the information about the data. So I need to download that, and I'm going to open it. I'm going to just take a look at it. Where the fuck is it? So yeah, this is where it is. So this has all the information about the data by itself. Okay, fuck, you know what, fuck it, I think I have to accept the license because I just got my laptop repaired. Okay, nope, accept. Okay, that's it. Okay, fine, thank God. Okay, so yeah, so this, what it has is, it has the title, it has who has the source. the number of data points it has, and what the attributes are. So my data by itself and the target variable. So there are 7 numerical and 13 categorical, and in the categorical is also called as qualitative. Okay. Over here, for example, if I go to, wait, let's search for male. Yeah, so if I go to attribute number 9, let's go to attribute number 9, which was over here. This has a column in vector 9. There'll be a column, I'll just show it to you right now. It'll have the value A91, which means male and divorced comma separated. A92 means female and divorced comma separated. Okay, so that's how it's going to look like, the data set by itself. So I read it from the URL and I write it into a German CSV. And if I look at it right now, it looks super ugly. Okay, there's nothing whatsoever. There's A11, A12, and all the kind of shit. Okay, so that is what happens with respect to. Okay, so I'm facing a power cut right now, but it's okay since I'm recording offline. This means this camera won't be working, so my floating camera won't be working, so I might not be able to take notes for a while, but it's okay. Most of it has already been covered in the other part. So this is what happens over here, A11, A12, A14 and all that kind of, this is how it looks like. So let's go to attribute vector 9. Yeah, you can see that A93, A92, all of that shit is there. So you need to clean this data, okay, for both exploratory data analysis and for machine learning. So that's what I've done over here. So for exploratory data analysis, I've used the switch case kind of thing. So if it's A11, I'm going to write this value, A12, that kind of thing. So that's a huge part. And then for machine learning, we use something called label encoder. Okay, what label encoder does is it converts a character into numeric values. So it gives it numbers instead of characters. So if it's male, means if there's a sex category and there's two genders, there are two genders obviously. So there's male and female. What it does is it sees the number of unique categories that there are. So it sees that there are only two genders in the sex wala column, and then it gives it 0 or 1. Okay, so 0 for male, 1 for female. Okay, so that's what this does. So we've done that part. Okay, so let me close this documentation and let's close our file explorer and our downloads. Okay, so I've gotten the data, and now what I do is I've seen the description also. You've seen the documentation, you've seen the description. Now you draw this pipeline. So real estate investments. Okay, what this does is it takes the data and then it prices it for real estate. It gives the prices, and then using other other signals, you try to invest. You make all of your investments, but this is majorly for real estate investments. Okay, over here we need to think whether if it's supervised, unsupervised, or reinforcement, whether if it's a classification, regression, and all that. Should you use batch or online? Okay, okay, let's answer each one of these for my project. Mine, I need to predict whether if it's it's a good loan or a bad loan, and I already have the target variable y, which says that it's which says whether if it's a good loan or a bad loan. So let's just go to EDA, import dataset, and I think the last variable should be that. Yeah, over here, outcome is either good or bad. Okay, so we do have our target variable and we do have our input variable, so it is supervised machine learning algorithm. Okay, then is it a classification, regression, or something else? So I'm trying to put it into a good class or a bad class, so it's classification. Then batch learning or online learning. I'm using batch learning because it's only 1,000 rows, and machine learning has gotten algorithms have been so super optimized that you can use batch learning even for 1,000,000 rows. So since I have only 1,000 data points, I'm okay with that. Then we select our performance measure. For me, it's classification. Over here in this problem, it's RMSE. Okay, in house loan, you need to predict the median value of house, right? How much a house will cost. So it's with respect to regression, so RMSE and R squared. Okay, but for me it will be precision, recall, F1 score, all that kind of shit. Okay, so after we pick this, she has skipped she's done data pre-processing also. Okay, she skipped the exploratory data analysis part, which is where you plot the graphs and shit. So if I plot the graphs right now, So this would be my target variable distribution. How many people have good credit, how many people have bad credit, or rather age distribution over good credit and bad credit. So blue means good, red means bad, and you can see that young people have a lot of bad credit, but at the same time, like people between the age of 20, what that's around 30, yeah. So 30 to 40, middle-aged people, they have really good credit. There's a high density of good credit people over there. Then if you look at figure 3 is a box plot differentiating how much credit amount they have. Okay, it gives us the outliers and everything. Let me zoom into this so that you have a better view of what, yeah. So this is an interactive graph, and you can see how much it looks like. So this is an adult people will have this much. So I can zoom in over here and I can see what it looks like. Okay, and finally figure number 4. If we have figure number 4, this is a plot where I try to plot the housing property. So for people who are for free, what is the ratio of good credit to bad credit? So you can see that people who live for free and rent, they're super close. Like it's super close that they have good credit and bad credit. But people who have own houses, a lot of people have good credit and very few people have bad credit. Okay, so the powers come back on. So I guess I can connect my camera again. Um, but yeah, so that's what happens with good credit and bad credit. Now after that, after you've done the EDA, after you've gotten the data, you need to pre-process the data. Okay, so this is what I told with label encoder. I did it in the first step, but before EDA, but you do it generally after EDA. Okay, now label encoding, this is something that will come in our exam. So what happens is she's going to give us a problem, and what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to label encode the categorical or character inputs, and then we're supposed to predict it. Okay, so yeah, so data cleaning is reading the missing value. So first we drop NA, okay, drop NA, and then or we replace the NA with median values. Okay, so this is the better one. Okay, mean or median. I generally prefer mean because you know what, median also is better. Median is better because there will be outliers. There'll be this huge Hollywood superstars will have fucking $100 million house, so better to take median. Okay, then what happens is you fill your missing values using this code. Okay, so you take the median as housing median, and then you fill NA with median. Okay, then what you do is you handle text and categorical attributes. Let me zoom in. Handling text and categorical attributes. So what you do is from sklearn import label encoder. Do not do one hot encoding, it's not worth your time. From sklearn.preprocessing import label encoder. Then okay, she hasn't written the code over here, so let me just open up assignment number 5, I think. Okay, so what that does is you need to, after importing label encoder, you need to do label encoder fit underscore transform, which does the fit part and the transform part at the same thing. So what it does is, remember how I told that it sees how many unique values are there. So there are 2 unique values, and then after that it transforms them into 0 and 1 for male and female. So those are 2 steps generally in label encoding. Okay, it's not over here, it's 4 or 3 or 2. Let's just see. With label encoding, horsepower, no, not this one. This is a housing CSV, perfect. So I'm gonna find label. Okay, label encoding. So sklearn.preprocessing import label encoder. So you do this part, mug this up. From sklearn.preprocessing import to label encoder. LE label encoder is equal to label encoder parentheses. That means you're calling the function, saving the function into this variable. Now label encoded is le.fit underscore transform. Okay, this is the better one. So yeah, same steps, these 2 are same. So what you do is you replace. So in my data, what I'm going to do is let me show you in mutating itself what I did. So in fit underscore transform, so this I've done it for every column. But what happens is tf underscore data of that column is label encoder fit underscore transform of tf underscore data of that column. So the same thing is happening here. So df of ocean proximity, you guys know how to index columns, is le.fit underscore transform of the same column again. So whatever you put over here, copy paste it again over here. Okay, so that's it. That is with respect to label encoding. So we've done that. Let me just leave my Jupyter notebooks open. Then data pre-processing is done. Standardization. Okay, with respect to code, I would suggest don't worry about standardization. You rarely need to do it. If you do it, it doesn't make that much of a difference, especially with linear regression. So just let it be, okay? So I'm going to skip this feature scaling part. So what it does majorly is, as I said, so the number of rooms range from 6 to 39,000. So it's going to try and fit it between 0 and 1. And income, while median incomes range from 0 to 15, okay, it should be the other way around. Incomes range from $6 to $39,000, and number of rooms change from 0 to 15. So what I do is 0 to 15, I bring it to 0 to 1, I scale it to 0 to 1. 6 to 39,320, I scale it to 1. Okay. Now training your model. Okay. So first thing, from sklearn, this you need to remember. Okay. They're going to ask you which for everything. Okay. So the major models you need to remember will be, I'm going to open up a notepad. Linear regression, SGD, okay, SGD regression, SGD classifier, logistic regression, linear SVM. Remember how to import these 5 classifiers. Okay, this is super important that you remember how to import all of these. So linear regression, SGD regression, SGD classifier, logistic regression, linear SVM. Okay, these are important. I'm going to send this in the group also. So that's that. And so remember how to do that. Okay, so from sklearn.linear model, import linear regression. Then this one you just need to mug it up, man. There's nothing you can do. So linear regression is called a linear regression. You call the function, same as how we did in label encoding. Then you fit it with your training data and your training labels, and then you predict over here, linear regression dot predict housing underscore test, and that you saved in another prediction. So this code looks a little bad. Let me show you with respect to this so that you know how train test split looks like. Cool. So from sklearn.linear model, linear regression, then I've saved the regression model into a regressor function. Then I have trained it using x underscore train, y underscore train. Then my predicted y underscore prediction is the dot predict of this linear regressor with my test function. Okay, so you have y underscore prediction over here. Then you import sklearn.metrics as metrics. Mean absolute error is equal to metrics.mean absolute error. MSE or mean squared error is metrics.mean squared error. RMSE is root of this. There is nothing called root mean square error, so you just need to do square root of MSE. Okay, so for that you need to import NumPy properly. For all of these, the first one will be your test, which is your true values, and the second one, every metrics will always take the first one as your true values, the second one as your test values. Okay, so that is with respect to testing. Okay, testing and training. Now cross validation I've already covered in the first video, so that's all. I'm not going to go through this all over again. So the cross validation score is going to be returned, and you can use it for many other tuning parameters too. Over here, if they ask you, I don't know whether she'll ask, but just remember it. Okay, from sklearn.externals import job lib. So what it does is it saves your job into a pickle file, and then you can load that pickle file as your linear regressor. So this linear regressor which I've trained, right, I can save it into a .pkl file. Okay, and then I can call it back later for further use. That's how I'm going to send. I'm not going to send this whole code to the bank. I'm going to only send the model which I have trained. Okay, that's all that they want. Okay, cool. Then fine tuning grid search. So this is a pain in the ass. What it does is, if you see in random forests, there are parameters called n estimator, maximum number of features to take, n and also some, I think there should be another one also, bootstrap. Okay, so this is this is a dictionary and it's saved into a list. This is saved into a dictionary which is random forest grids, param grid. Then what you do is it remember how I said cross validation, it does it for each set of data and for each tuning parameter. Same thing, but it does for everything. So forest underscore regression, it will take this n parameters 3 and then it will do for 2, 4, 8 false, 3 and 10, 2, 3 and 4. Then it will go to 10 and then it will do 2, 4, 6, 8 false, 10 and that, and then 30 and that. Same thing for 2, it will do 3, 10, and it will make a huge data frame with all of the values. Okay, so this will give us a score, and as you can see, so 2 it's done for 3, 2, 10, 2, 30, then 4 then it goes to 4. Remember how I said 2, 4, 6 over here? Where is 2, 4, 6, 8? So yeah, so 2, 4, 6, 8. Then after that it goes through bootstrap, then 2, 4, 6, 8. It's supposed to go through 2, 4, 6, 8. I don't know why 3 came. Okay, some random ass bullshit she's copied and pasted. Okay, I wouldn't suggest, like, it's a pain. If you want to remember this, well and good. If you can, well and good. If not, then just fuck it. Okay, now ensemble methods are basically like random forests. Decision tree is a machine learning algorithm, and ensemble techniques are basically bagging techniques. So what they do is they take hundreds of decision trees and they put it into your random forest. Okay, so decision tree is good for binary classification. Random forest is when you take hundreds of decision trees and try to predict 100 classes. Okay, so that's it with respect to ensemble techniques. So this PPT has been done, and what I just want to look at the timestamp so that I can. Okay, so we're at 27 minutes for the first PPT, which is the end-to-end machine learning model. Now let's go through logistic regression. Okay, cool. Logistic regression is majorly used for binary classification. Whenever you use it for multiple classification, what it does is it takes one class and treats the other two classes as negative class. Okay, so if you, in case you have 0, 1 and 2, I'll just connect my camera. Give me a second, guys. I'm gonna have some water. So in case you have 3 classes, what it does is it takes 2 of those classes, treats them as the negative class, and one of those classes is treated as the positive class. So what we've done in classification, the same thing all over again. So I'm just gonna try and pull up our notebook. I don't know if you can see the camera. Cool. And I'll be closing our display capture for a second. Okay, so with respect to linear regression, what happens, logistic regression, okay, first things first, I forgot to tell you guys, the reason it's called logistic regression, even though it's a classification model, is because when they first invented it, they did linear regression, pipelined it to a logistic function or a sigmoid function, and hence they named it logistic regression. Okay, so hence they named it logistic regression. So what happened is they would take, like, let's say the German data itself, and then they predict this, or let's say you want to predict the salary of a person with their years and all of that. Then what they do is they predict whether if this guy is a senior level executive or a normal grunt guy. So they first predict a regression continuous value, or you know what, better example would be obese or not obese. They would take the height, what food you eat, which country you're in, all of that, and then they would predict your weight, and then they would predict whether if you're obese or not obese. Okay, so that's what happens with logistic regression. Now if we go towards logistic regression, so I don't know why she's written it as regression algorithm. This is not a regression algorithm, even though it has regression in it. It is a pure classification algorithm. Okay. So what this does is you have class 0 and class 1. Okay. So all your data points, if you predicted, this is the y, right? So they would fall in over 0 or they would fall in 1. Okay. Then if you look at this, what happens is it plots the logistic regression, it plots a sigmoid function, and we've all seen sigmoid functions. They look like this S, and they take either 0 value or they take 1 value after a certain threshold value. Okay, so that's what it does. Okay, so that's what logistic regression does. I don't know what softmax is. So I think what softmax does is it takes away a few of these errors. So what it doesn't do is it doesn't plot all of this and then goes over there and then does that. So it takes a few of those errors and then it plots it. So let's just plot this logistic regression graph again, and then I'll darken this part a little. So that's our logistic regression. Okay. Now what it does is it uses all of these parameters. It then calculates a probability. Okay, it calculates the probability using some function. So our final y value is actually going to be a probability. So let's say I using my region, what I eat, what kind of, if I'm vegetarian, whether if I'm male or female, it calculates a probability of 0.7 that I am obese. Okay, which might be true. So 0.7 that I am obese. What it does is it takes a defined threshold value. So I'm going to define the threshold at 0.5. Okay, so the threshold is 0.5. Anything, if I get the probability above this threshold value, that's it. It's going to take it as obese. So since it's 0.7, it's going to be obese. If I get the y value predicted to be equal to 0.2, then it comes at not obese. Okay, so that's what is with respect to logistic regression. So it's generally used. This makes it a binary classifier. Okay, so whatever I've said, split it into 3 points. Okay, so logistic regression is a type of classification algorithm that can be used to predict predict what class a given data point falls into. Okay, so say that's point number 1. Point number 2, it is generally used to predict the probability that an instance belongs to a particular class. Okay, so it predicts it first estimates the probability of belonging to certain class and predicts based on threshold if it falls into that class or the other. Okay, so it predicts whether if it falls into that class or the other. Okay, so this is a binary classifier. Then you write the point that this is a binary classifier, hence it is a binary classifier. Okay, give an example saying that it predicts whether if it first estimates a probability, use this example, estimates a probability of 0.7 0.65, and if the threshold is taken as 0.5, it falls it into class 1. 0.65, that it belongs to class 1. Always remember to say that it belongs to class 1 or class 0. Then you say 0.5 is the threshold, so then it predicts that it belongs to class 1. Okay, then we're going to go through functions. Okay, the function set. Okay, so our y is equal to sigmoid of z, or sigmoid of our input, which is actually x. If it's greater than equal to 0.5, then it is equal to class 1. Okay, if the sigmoid function of x is greater than our threshold value, which is 0.5, it belongs to class 1. Let me see if I'm in frame or not. Yeah, I'm in frame. Then the second one is sigmoid of x, our input, is lesser than 0.5, means it belongs to class 0. Okay, now this x rather should be z only. You know what, let's keep it as z. Okay, now this z is the equation which it builds, so with weights and biases. So w times the weights times, or rather the slope times the input features, plus our bias. Okay, so the z overall is equal to sigma wi xi plus our bias. Okay, this goes from I equal to 1 to n. Okay, now this is our z. How do we calculate sigma of z? Sigma of z is equal to, you know how a sigmoid function works, right? It's the reciprocal of 1 plus exponent of minus z. Okay, so remember these three. I'll go through this again. So what is a logistic regression? What is a logistic regression classifier? First point, it is a classifier. It is a type of classifier that is used to predict which class given variable, a given data point falls into. Then second point, you write the method. Okay, so it is first you write that it's a classification technique. Second, you write the method. It first estimates the probability of a data point belonging to a class, and then based on a threshold value, it predicts whether if it belongs to the same class or should be put into the other class. Okay, then the third point is that it is a binary, hence it is a binary classifier, because it says whether if it falls into this or this, hence it is a binary classifier. Now you're supposed to write the equations. What you do is you write, instead of y, write probability or output. Output is equal to sigmoid function of z. Sigmoid function of z, which will predict the probability. So this is our probability function. If the sigmoid function of z is greater than equal to our threshold value, which in this case is 0.5, class 1. Over here the probability is lesser than 0.5, means class 0. Okay, so that's what happens over here. Then you write what is z. Z is the weights into our instances plus the bias, which can also be represented as sum of wi xi from I equal to 1 to n plus bias. Sigmoid of z is equal to 1 divided by 1 plus exponent of minus z. So this is a sigmoid function. It's defined that way. Okay, so I can't explain more than that. So that's it. Okay, so that's it with respect to logistic regression. Then goodness of a function is being covered. So what is goodness of a function? Okay, goodness of a function is basically trying to do testing. Okay, it's just trying to test. So I'm not going to cover step 2, that goodness of a function. Okay, which is basically the loss function. So you can just write loss function. I don't know whether if you need to remember that huge ass equation. You know what, let's just go through it in case we need to. So goodness of a function, for what you do is you first estimate the cost function. So just write, next what you do is you do the cost function. So write in capital cost function, and then you just write the cost function. Okay, don't explain it that much, it just needs to minimize this cost function. Okay, so 1 by m sigma minus 1 by m sigma yi log of pi plus 1 minus yi into log of 1 minus pi. Okay, so this is from I equal to 1 to I equal to m. Okay, so again the cost function basically tells us the goodness, how good or how bad it's done, which is equal to minus 1 by m times sigma of I equal to 1 to the power of m till m. So what you do is, this is yi means class, this y is for class this y is for class 1 times log of pi. So this is again for probability for class 1 plus 1 minus class 1. So you have to do both the functions, right? So 1 minus yi times log of 1 minus pi. So it's super simple. Just remember this one equation for cost function. So write cost function when they ask you to explain logistic regression, and do that. Then step 2 we have trained the data, and then step 3 we found the cost function. Step 2 is finding the cost function. So I think that's done, and that's it. Okay, then after that she's covered some code. There's this one slide which says step 1, 2, 3 and comparing each one. Oh, okay, so what happens, you know what, let me come back to the slides. Let me stop this, let me come to our slides. Okay, so what happens is, in linear regression we just do the equation which I wrote, sigma y w weights plus beta, but sigmoid function brings the output between 0 and 1. Okay, then over here you predict the real number, and then you take the error, take the r value. This is r squared. Okay, so the how you find this is 1 by 2 sigma fx of n minus yn of n, or rather no, this is squares. So yeah, this is squares, mean squares. Okay, so this is for mean squares. So this is how you find the error over here, the loss function. So she's written that over here, error or loss or cost. It's called error function or loss function or cost function. So for linear regression, the loss function is 1 by 2 sigma fx of n minus y of n. Over here the loss function L of fx of n comma y of n, which we've written over here, the j theta. Okay, then step 3 is finding the weights, right? Oh yeah, finding the new weights based on our loss function. So I am not going to write this, I'm just going to write step 3 is finding the new weights based on our loss function. Okay, even though we need to remember the same thing for both of them. Okay, so it is the initial weight, the current weight that we have, times this n sigma n minus of y predicted, or y actual minus y predicted, times xi of n to the power of n. Okay, so I don't know if you want to remember this or not. I'm just going to write step 3 as minimizing the loss function by giving a new weight. Okay, now we're going to look at the code for this shit. Okay, so obviously she's done this. Let me open in Jupyter Notebooks, that would be better. We have Iris and Setosa, all that, right? Just give me a second, guys. I don't have my fan on. Okay, so I think this is Boston dataset, right? Cool. So this is AutoMG dataset. So it's not 4 and 5. I hope it's experiment 6 and 7. If it's not 6, means I'll cry. Yeah, cool. So over here, I'm going to show you how to do logistic regression. Okay. So what she's done is she's first from sklearn.datasets load iris. I don't think it's necessary for us to load the dataset. We can just directly say that load iris is our data frame. Okay. But if you want to, if she says import the dataset from sklearn.datasets and do that, well and good. Okay. Then import sklearn. I don't know why I imported pre-processing. Yeah, okay. Then import pandas as pd, import numpy as np, import matplotlib.pyplot as plt. Then this is important. So this should rather come over here. From sklearn.model selection, import train test split. Okay. Then from numpy, import random. So I think I did that for later. Okay, for later I've done that, but yeah. So what this does is I've first taken the x values, which is load iris functions dot data, then y is load iris functions dot target. So this returns a dictionary, and dot target will give us the target variables and save it into y. Dot x will give us the data and save it into x. Then I've used train test split. Okay, so let me just, after it imports, I'll be able to see what the function will return. I think we've already seen this, but what train test split does is it takes two arrays of the same length and returns the train test of the first array, train test of the second array. It doesn't need to take only two, it can take x, y, z, w, all that shit. But over here also you need to put z train, z test, w train, w test. Okay, so if I, yeah, so split arrays into matrices into random train test subsets. Okay, so I've taken the test size as 0.25 and the random state as 122, which makes sure that my, so if you look at this 97, 93.6, if I use this random state, I'll probably be getting the same, yeah, I'll get the same accuracy because it's the same train test split. Now, from sklearn.linear model, import logistic regression. Okay. Over here in logistic regression, because it's binary, you need to mention it's multi-class. Has she done that over here? Okay, so it's not, she's not done that over here because she has taken that iris virginica. It should be either virginica or it can be whatever else it wants. So it doesn't need to be three classes. Let's see. Yeah. So virginica, versicolor, and setosa. Okay, so over here I think she, yeah. Multi-class is multinomial, so let's directly go for multi-class. Okay, multinomial. And what this means is that yeah, so what it does then is it, remember how I did linear regression, same thing, this is one of the parameters. So multi-class, multinomial, then you fit it, then you predict it, then you use classifier.score to get the accuracy. Classifier.accuracy underscore score to get the accuracy. Then you use classification report to print the precision recall F1 score. So sklearn.metrics.classification report. sklearn.metrics.classification report for precision recall F1 score. sklearn.metrics.confusion matrix for the confusion matrix. Okay. So that's it with respect to this. Okay. So how to import the data set and everything. Now softmax regression or multinomial logistic regression. So we need to go through this now. Logistic regression can be generalized to support multiple classes. Oh, so softmax is basically using multi-class, dude. Okay, so that's what it means. So softmax regression computes a score for each class k and estimates the probability for each class by applying the softmax function or the normalized exponential. Okay. Just write that it applies the softmax function. If you have time, learn the softmax function, or else I don't think it's necessary. Okay, I'm not going to learn it. Already there are so many equations we need to remember. Okay, so the softmax function is a way for us to implement multinomial classification on logistic regression. Okay, so that's what softmax does, and that's what we've done over here. Okay. Cool. In case there are any doubts with respect to this, just DM it to me or send it in the group. Okay. Now let us see the timestamp. Let me close this. Don't save. And Yeah, okay. So we're over here. What's the timestamp? It's around 50 minutes. Wow. So we're in 15 minutes we've covered this. Let me just revise the whole thing again about logistic regression. So let me pull up our video capture device. So in logistic regression, what happens is you first need to write what logistic regression is. So what logistic regression does is it predicts a probability using sigmoid function, and then it predicts based on a threshold whether if it falls in class 1 or class 0. Okay, so logistic regression is a type of it's a classification method. Okay, so logistic regression is a classification method to predict whether if a certain data point falls into one class or not. So it estimates the probability of belonging to a certain class, and based on a threshold value, over here it's 0.5, based on threshold value it predicts whether if it falls into the same class or into the other class. Since there are only two classes, it is a binary classification technique. Okay, so it's a binary classification technique. Now what you do is you say the y output is equal to the sigmoid, whether if it falls in class 1 or class 0. That is our y output. So if sigmoid of z is greater than 0.5, then it falls into 1. If sigmoid of z is lesser than our threshold 0.5, it falls into 0. What is z? Z is our equation, which is with the weights and the x1. So z is equal to sigma wixi from 1 to n plus our bias. Okay, then sigmoid of z is 1 by 1 plus exponent of minus z. Okay, so once you replace this x value over here with the weights and bias, you get z as 25.93. okay, then sigmoid takes 1 by 1 plus exponent of minus 25.3. okay, e to the power of that. Okay, then what happens is output so that's what sigmoid of z does. Then after computing that, it gets 0.65, say, then it puts it into class 1. Okay, so that is with respect to this. After putting it into class 1 and class 0, you use the cost function to predict how well it's done. So for logistic regression, the cost function is 1 by m sigma I equal to 1 till m of yi times log of pi plus 1 minus yi times log of 1 minus pi. Okay, it's super easy to remember. Just once if you say it, it's more than enough. Okay, so that's what this does. After finding the cost function, it finds a new weight parameter for z and then replaces it by reducing the cost function using gradient descent. Okay, so that is with respect to logistic regression. Now I'm going to open our display capture and then go to softmax. So we've covered logistic regression step 1, 2, 3. Over here, this is only double class. So there is Virginica, there is Setosa, and there is some other bullshit. Virginica, Setosa, and Indica or whatever. Virginica, versicolor. Okay, versicolor. Okay. So what our machine learning algorithm does is, for pure logistic regression, it just prints out whether if it is Virginica or Setosa using all of this sepal length, petal width, sepal length, sepal width. It gets a z value using wixi, sigma wixi plus b. It gets a z value, and then it does 0 or 1 and then checks. So if I have predicted z the y value as 0 but it's actually 1, it will say that, oh my god, it's an error, finds the cost function, reduces the error using gradient descent, then comes back over here, predicts it as 1. So that is with respect to logistic regression. Now softmax regression is for implementing multiple classes. So we want to implement not only for Virginica or not Virginica, it should tell whether if it's Virginica or if it's Setosa or if it is versicolor. So that what it does is it computes a score for each class, then does the probability and by applying the softmax function, and then it does gradient descent and then reduces the cost function. Okay, so that's it. I'm not going to remember the softmax function, but if you want, you can just do exponent of softmax function of x divided by sigma exponent of softmax function of x from 1 to k. That's it. Okay, I'm not going to write all of this. K is the number of classes. Sx is the vector containing the scores for each class. Okay, sigma of Sx is the estimated probability. Okay, basically, you know what, let's cover this also. It's super easy. Remember how I said sigmoid of z? Basically, instead of z, you have something called Sx. So Sx is, that's it. Okay, instead of z, it's Sx over here. So you can again write sigmoid of z only, but in the bottom, remember how we had 1 minus that? Over here in the bottom, in sigmoid, we had 1 plus exponent of minus z. We had 1 plus exponent of minus z. Instead of 1 plus exponent of minus z, you take sum of exponent of minus z. Okay, sum of exponent of minus z. Okay, that's it. Okay, super cool, super easy, and we've done it with respect to that. Okay, so this PPT is done. So our timestamp for this is around 55 minutes. Okay, now let's move to classification. Okay, let me have some water. Now with respect to classification, what happens is we're going to go through slide by slide. So you know what classification is. We covered it in the first video, and I've told you what regression is. So in regression you predict values, in classification you predict classes. Now in this example, in the PPT, they're going to use the Modified National Institute of Technology Standards and Technology database. So MNIST data set for 70,000 small images of digits. So it looks like handwritten images of digits 0 0 0 0 1 1 1 1 1 like that. Okay, so it fetches this data. This is how we loaded Iris. It's going to fetch this data and MNIST. Okay, so that is with respect to MNIST. X will be our MNIST of data, Y will be MNIST of target, and then we can see the shape. Okay, this is with respect to plotting the digits. I don't think it's necessary to learn how to plot it. Okay, now we're going to go to the nitty gritty shit. Okay, I think has she split it into X train, X test? No, she hasn't. But what she needs to do is she's taking the first 60,000 as train and the next 60,000 as test. Okay, so she's taken the first 60,000 as train, next 60,000 as text, and then she shuffled the index. Okay, so we had this problem. We realized this. I think Achyut, Ashwini, and me, we thought like, what if it's already in training, and what if it's the same one? So it shuffles the index and then puts it into train and test, so that it doesn't remember it the same way, in the same order. Okay, so what a phi detector does is, it's a binary classifier like logistic regression. It detects whether if it is it belongs to class 5, as in the digit written is 5, or it is not 5. Okay, so y train is equal to y train equal to 5. So true for all 5, and y test is equal to y test equal to 5. Okay, then what we do is train is being taken as 5, y test is for 5. So this is when you want to predict only whether if it's 5 or not. Let me see whether if my notes are still open. No, it's not open. Okay, so linear, I told you you need to remember how to import SGD classifier, SGD regressor, linear regressor, logistic regressor, linear support vector machine, linear support vector classifiers. Okay, so for this is a new terminology alert. Okay, from sklearn.linear model, import SGD classifier, then SGD classifier.fit, SGD classifier.predict, and then you do this is stratified k-fold. You know what, we're not going to do stratified k-fold. Okay, fuck this shit. What we're going to do is, we're going to see what we do after predicting is using precision, recall, F1 score, sensitivity, and confusion matrix, all that kind of shit, to see how our thing has performed. So skip this slide completely. I swear to God, if she asks stratified k-fold, I'm not going to write. Okay, so now confusion matrix. So we've covered what a confusion matrix is. It is to count the number of instances of class A are classified as B, are classified as class B, and vice versa. Okay, so remember what happened. We have over here whether if it is the image is a 5 and whether if the image is not 5. Okay, whether if the image is not 5. So that means we have two classes, so it's a binary class. And remember what I said, so for it, if it's two classes, it will have 4 boxes. So it has 1 box, 2 box, 3 box, 4 box. After I draw these 4 boxes, I extend these columns to have positive, negative. Then I don't need to do this press and recall. All of this shit I can write outside. Okay, what I do is I find the totals over here. Okay, I write total actual positive class, total actual negative, total predicted positive, total predicted negative. Okay, now true positive is the number of correct predictions. An example is positive. Okay, she's written jack shit. What you write is true positive is the number of positive predictions that are actually positive. Okay, true positive is the number of positive predictions that are actually positive. True negative is the number of negative predictions that are actually negative. False positive is the number of positive predictions that are actually negative. False negatives are the number of negative predictions that are actually positive. That's it. Super simple. If you want to give an example, draw this graph and then make an example. Okay, draw this confusion matrix and make an example. So sensitivity, remember it's also called as sen. You get the n sound, so do p. So it's called true positive rate or recall. So for sensitivity, if you want to remember how to do it, you take the first row of the confusion matrix. Okay, but like this is if you want to remember it basically, but it's better to remember the definition because you need to write the definition. So the definition for recall is the number of actual positive class that have been correctly predicted as positive. The number of actual positive class, which is this over here, that have been predicted correctly. Okay, that have been actually predicted correctly. Okay, so that's it with respect to that. Now the formula for this would be we covered it, TP by TP plus Fn. So this row, TP divided by TP plus Fn. Okay, specificity is the for the other one. So the true negative rate, I told you go to the first row, right? Now for specificity, go to the second row. The number of actually negative class that have been correctly classified as negative. So it's Tn by Fp plus Tn. Okay, so for instance, proportion of emails which are non-spam among all. Okay, so you need to make sure that when you predict something as non-spam, it should be non-spam. It shouldn't be some important email. So the proportion of non-spam should be really high with respect to non-spam. So this is a good example where you want specificity to be high. Okay, then precision. So what precision does is, remember the PPP rule. Precision is positive divided by positive, true positive and false positive. So you go to this column, positive positive, it should have all PPP. Okay, for precision remember PPP. So true positive divided by true positive plus false positive. The definition is the number of predicted positive predicted class that are actually positive. So how much of this positive predicted is actually positive? Okay, so that is with respect to precision. Accuracy is everything, all. So A for accuracy is A for all. So TP plus Tn divided by TP plus Fp plus Fn plus Tn. Okay, so that is accuracy. Now since I explained that precision recall trade-off, right? So to make sure you don't get that kind of recall, you need to have a maximum score. So what they do is they use this thing called F1 score, which is the harmonic mean of precision and recall. So if you take the harmonic mean of precision and recall, you get 2 into precision into recall by precision plus recall. Okay, so this is what you need. Okay, from sklearn.metrics import confusion matrix, or you can just import sklearn and then do sklearn.metrics.confusion matrix of white train. Okay, white, it should be white test. Oh my god, it should be y test of 5. Okay, she's written it wrong over here. Y test of 5 and y prediction of 5. Okay, so the confusion matrix gives us y test of 5 and y prediction of 5. Okay, make sure you write that. So it represents the over here in row. So yeah, this is actually how we plotted it. The rows are actual, the column is predicted. Okay, so this means that over here in our actually there are 53272 plus 1307 which are predicted as 5. Okay, or not predicted. Okay, over here the true positive is over here. Okay, the true positive is over here. So 5232, these are all not 5, this is all 5. So there are totally 5000 odd number of 5 digits in our test, and there's around 54,000. Yeah, no, what 5,000? Oh, yeah, 54,000. So 54,500 data points which are not 5. In that 54,000, it has predicted that 53,000 will be positive class. So that's what you guys get it. I mean, there's no point in explaining it again and again. So just write whatever you see over here in text. Okay, now F1 score is harmonic mean, we've seen that. Now precision recall trade-off. Okay, so this one also we've covered. When do you want high precision? You want high precision when you want, okay, so let me go back to the confusion matrix. When do you get high precision? You get high precision when your false negatives are low. So you don't want low false negatives. You can put as many as you want in true positives. You want to predict a lot of positive class. You want to have a lot of positive class, but you don't want your false negative. You can have your false negative to be low. You can afford to lose your false negative. Okay, so what you do is examples where you would want this to happen is where you have somebody with cancer, or rather another example would be conviction. Remember I told about conviction. So if somebody who's innocent, you want to predict whether if somebody, the positive class is predicting that they're innocent, or positive class is predicting that they're guilty, and negative is predicting that they're not guilty. So you want to make sure that the number of people you have predicted as guilty or actually guilty are intersecting a lot. You don't want not innocent people to be predicted as not guilty. Okay, so you want to reduce this number, and hence you want to decrease Fn. Okay, similarly if you want to see somebody with cancer, what you do is you want to make sure that people who do have cancer are who they shouldn't be predicted as not cancer. Like even if they don't have cancer, it's okay if you predict them as cancer. They're just going to get some treatment and it's fine. Okay, if they're predicted as not cancer. Okay, so it's fine if they have to pay something. Yeah, I mean money, you can earn it. I mean people die or commit suicide after that, but that's a different story. So in case you do want to have money, you can spend money, but you can't spend your life lost over here. The time lost in making a wrong diagnosis is pretty bad. So you want to predict that people do have cancer. Okay, so you don't want to sacrifice the false negative. You need to have a low false negative. So that's what precision recall trade-off is. So just write that you want to make sure that for precision, what happens is for recall, what happens is you get all of the guilty people, and for precision you make sure that all of the innocent people go away. So you need to make sure which is in mind. Okay, what do you have in mind first, like which is your important part, and then you say that increasing precision reduces recall and vice versa. This is called precision recall trade-off. Okay, so then draw this graph. Okay, and make sure that your limits of the graph are from 0 to 1. The way she's drawn this graph, I don't know if she has given the code. I think it's explained in the next step. Let's see this example that rejects many good videos. Okay, so in in YouTube, you want to make sure that there's adult age restricted videos and non-age restricted videos, right? So in age restricted videos, it's fine. Okay, if in age restricted videos, like you put some non-age restricted videos under age restricted videos, but you shouldn't put an age restricted video in a non-age restricted video. Okay, it's okay if you put the other way around. It's okay if you put like a kids TV show in, like, if you put like a normal not age restricted, means, yeah, if you put a kids show itself in a age restricted, it's okay if it's age restricted. Okay, like people can survive with that, but you shouldn't put like something with gore and something with a lot of blood in not age restricted. You shouldn't put it in something where kids can watch it easily. Okay, cool. The ROC curve, this one, all I'm gonna tell you is just mug these 3 points. Okay, this one does precision versus recall. So but the ROC curve plots the true positive rate against the false positive rate. So TPR versus FPR. ROC means receiving operating characteristic. It is TPR versus FPR, and we know your FPR is the ratio of negative instances that are incorrectly classified as positive. Okay, so FPR is, I think, 1 minus specificity. So yeah, so write that FPR is the ratio of negative classes that are incorrectly classified as positive. So, and then write that it is 1 minus specificity or true negative rate. Then write that the ROC curve plots sensitivity, which is recall versus 1 minus specificity, and then you draw this graph. Make sure it's 0 to 1. The precision recall graph goes like this. Okay, the TPR FPR graph goes like this. Okay, to plot this, what she's done is she's calculated FPR, TPR and thresholds using the ROC curve function. Okay, so you get the FPR, TPR and threshold values. Then what it's done is it's plotted FPR versus TPR, that line, and it's also plotted intercept 1 and slope 1 wala line. Okay, that's it. Okay, so that is it with respect to basic classification. Let's go through this once before we revise multi-class classification. So what is classification? It predicts classes. Over here we use the MNIST dataset, where in the binary classification we try to predict if it's 5 or not 5. So it can be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's not that. So as long as it's 5 or not 5. So class 1 is 5, class 0 is not 5. Okay, then we import the data set. All of this is importing the data set and then splitting the data into training and testing. Over here, this is important. From sklearn.linear model, import SGD classifier. So if they tell you to use SGD classifier, you should say sklearn.linear model, import SGD classifier. Then confusion matrix, we know how to plot a confusion matrix. Okay, so we covered that. True positive is the number of positive class predictions that are actually belonging to positive class. True negative is the number of negative class prediction that actually belong to negative class. False positive is the number of positive class prediction belonging to negative class. False negative is the one belonging to negative negative class prediction belonging to positive class. Okay, sensitivity, also called as recall, is the first row. It is the number of true positive positive class predictions with respect to the total positive class. Okay, so ratio, the number of positive class predictions or the number of actual positive class which have been predicted positive correctly. Okay, sensitivity is that. So specificity is the opposite. In the negative class, for the number of negative class predictions that have been correctly predicted as negative class, also known as true negative rate. Precision is the number of positive class predictions that have been correctly predicted as positive. So the number of positive class predictions, the other ones are actual. This is with this, and for this you take TP. For P, you remember PPP rule, TP by TP plus FP. Accuracy is all of them together. F1 score is the harmonic mean, and over here I've told you what the confusion matrix means. Precision recall trade-off is when you have high precision, you have lower recall. When you have low recall, you have high precision, so you have to find the optimal value, or you need to decide where you want what. So in precision, if you don't want to have a person who is innocent be given as guilty, convicted of a crime that he is not guilty of. And in recall, you don't want somebody who has cancer to be predicted as doesn't have cancer. Okay, so you need to increase recall over there. The prescient recall curve looks like this. The ROC curve, or the receiving operating classifier characteristic curve, is the curve that plots the true positive rate and the false positive rate. The false positive rate is the ratio of negative instances that are incorrectly classified. Okay, so it is the false positive means the negative instances that are incorrectly classified. So the actual negative that are incorrectly classified as positive. So that is 1 minus specificity. Okay, so the ROC curve plots sensitivity versus specificity, 1 minus specificity, and it looks like this. So we've done that. Now let's go to multi-class classification. Okay, so in multi-class classification, we look at random forest classifiers. They handle multiple classes very well. Support vector machines don't handle multi-class well. So what they do is they do something called one versus all. So what this happens is, remember we did a phi detector over here. It just predicts whether if it's a 5 or not a 5. Support vector machines do that. They first go from 0 to 10, and then they first take 0. Is it a 0? They do a 0 detector, then a 1 detector, then a 2 detector, and so on. So this means that if there are n classes, there will be n detectors or n machine learning classifiers. Okay, there will be n classifiers. This is called one versus all, because you take one class and detect it against all the other classes. Okay, so this is one versus all, and then it outputs the highest score for 0 detector, highest score for 1 detector, highest score for 2 detector, and hence it's called one versus all. Another strategy is taking pairs of digits. Okay, so it's taking 0 and 0 versus 1, 0 versus 2, 0 versus 3, 0 versus 4, so on till 0 versus 9. Then 1 versus 0 has already been done, so it does 1 versus 2, 1 versus 3, 1 versus 4, so on till 1 versus 9. Then same thing, 2 versus 0 has been done in the first one, 2 versus 1 has been done in the previous one, so it does 2 versus 3, 2 versus 4, 2 versus 5, and so on. So it over here what happens is 0 is class, the positive class, 2 is the negative class. Over here 1 is the positive class, 2 is the negative class, and so on. This is 1 versus 1, so it's one class versus one class. And to find this, you just need to sum. So first one has 10 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. If you do that, it's a sum of 1 to n. Sum of all numbers, sum of 1 to n. Okay, so that is n into n plus 1 by n minus 1 by 2. So for 10 you get 10 into 9 divided by 2, which is 45. So for this one you get 45 binary classifiers. So in 45 binary classifier, over here the problem is, over here the thing is there are 10 classifiers. You get a good score, but it takes a lot of time because you need to train it on all the data, because it's 0 detector, so it's 1 versus all. But in binary classifier, in this 1 versus 1, you just need to train on the zeros and twos, that data alone. So if there's 1,000 data points, you only need to do it on 2,000 data points. You just need to train it on 2,000 data points. 1 versus 2 is another 2,000. So you have 45 binary classifiers, each with 2,000. Okay, so support vector machine. So this one performs bad if there's a huge data set. So there's like 50,000 50,000 means it'll perform bad because it needs to make 10 classifiers with 50,000, and hence it is used for small data sets. Okay, OVO is preferred since it's faster to train many classifiers on small than training few classifiers on large data sets. Okay, so what this does is, I swear to God, I don't know which. You just copy paste this, man. Okay, I'm super tired to explain this. So support vector machine classifiers scale poorly with size. OVO is preferred since it is faster to train many classifiers on small training data sets. Okay, yeah, so I was correct. So you don't use OVA for large training data set. Okay, so you don't use OVA when you have large data sets and many classes at the same time. OVA when you have large data sets and large number of classes. You use OVO because it's it splits the data into parts and it makes it into a binary classifier, and there are many binary classifiers. So binary classifiers are okay. But whenever you have a large data set but only a binary classifier, you use one versus all. Okay. Now SGD, this is for one versus all for 5 detector. Okay, so this is 5 detector. SGD CLF, it fits, then it predicts. Okay, it predicts some random digit. Okay, so we've taken some random digit as A. What you can do is this CLF dot fit and predict, this is something called CLF dot decision function of that some digit. Okay, so what it does is it returns then array of scores, then you take the highest score over here and then you tell what it is. Okay, what class it belongs to. So you can tell it to import 1 versus 1 or 1 versus rest classifier. This one you just have to mug it up. Okay, so I don't know how else to explain it. You just need to mug it up. And remember standard scaler. Okay, this is important. We'll go through standard scaler. We have error classification and multi-label and multi-classification. Okay, these are super simple. So what is scaling? So imagine I want to predict whether if it's good. Yeah, so let's take our problems of good credit or bad credit. There is age, which is between 0 and 100, and there is credit amount, which is between 0 and 15,000 German dollars. Okay, so what you need to do for a classification algorithm to perform better is to bring it all to between 0 and 1. So that's what the standard scaler does. So from sklearn.preprocessing, import standard scaler. It's best if you do it during your training itself. So that's really good that he's done it over here. She's done it over here. So you do remember how we've done linear regressor function and we've saved it into this variable. Same thing over here. Xtrain scaled is scalar.fit underscore transform. Remember how we did label encoding fit underscore transform? Same thing. Then x.xtrain. The reason why you do this as type np float is because it doesn't, the scalar takes the input as a matrix, so 2-dimensional array, but not a data frame. Xtrain is in the form of a data frame. So the standard scalar, you convert it into as type numpy float 64, and hence the data frame, which looks like a table, is converted into a 2-dimensional matrix and it gets scaled. This, and also remember to do standard scaling only after label encoding. Label encoding converts the character into numeric, and after converting it to numeric you can do the transformation. Okay, then this cross validation score, we've covered it, and then this confusion matrix also we've covered it. Okay, so this confusion matrix over here, this diagonal is all the good classifications that our model has made. This is class 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, let me see if I can open it up. Okay, so let me see if I can open our MNIST wala data set. When you print the classification report for that, it looks super nice, rather. I would say nice. Yeah, nice is the good word. So this is 4-3, yeah, over here. Do you see this classification report? It's a 10 cross 10 matrix. Remember how I said if you have n classes, you have n cross n matrix. So this is how the classification report looks. So that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and similarly 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. So that is with respect to confusion matrix, and then multi-label classification. Okay, so now what you need to do is multi-label classification. What happens is it has one data input and it needs to give multiple classes output. Okay, over here it says the person face recognition. Another better way for us to tell is, I'm gonna change to our video capture scene. Okay, I don't know if it's caught it yet. Okay, cool. So we're over here. I don't know where the fuck my phone is. Okay, I found it. Never mind. So imagine we have this MNIST data set, right, which has 9 or 2 or 5. What our thing needs to do is it'll have the image by itself, will have 9, 2, 5, 6. This is the image which is written. I'm going to feed this image into our classifier. It needs to give from this one data point. So this is one image only one image, but it needs to find out all of these classes. It needs to put this into class 9, this into class 2, this into class 5, and this into class 6. Okay, so that's what it does. So this is a multi-label classification. Okay, multi-output or multi-label classification. Okay, so it needs to give multiple labels. Oh fuck, wait. Okay, so yeah, this is okay. So yeah, multi-label classification. So it just needs to predict whether if it's 9, 2, 5, 6. Another one would be, let's say I've invented a language which has okay, this symbol in that language. You know what? Let's make another symbol. This symbol in that language means 9. Okay, I want my classifier to read this image, which is a matrix of pixels, then make a prediction that it belongs to class 9, and then output it as an image of 9. So what I want my machine to do is read an image. So let's say I have this square image, and inside the square image I have drawn a symbol. This symbol over here. Now this symbol, it needs to read the pixels, classify it as the number 9, and it needs to output it as another image called 9, which I can print out as a sheet or save it. Okay, so that is multi-output classification. So it is generation of multi-label classification where each label can be multi-class. So let's build a system that removes noise and input as a noisy image, and it will clean the image, represent it as an array of pixel intensities just like MNST. Okay, so this image, it won't, our classifier won't obviously output an image, it will output a matrix of intensity. So 0, 0, 2, 5, 5, 0, 7, 9, like that. Okay, so that is with respect to classification. How much? We're 1.5 hours in. Let me just see what shit we have on regression. Regression is pretty tough, so we need to go through least squares, right? Okay, you know what, I'll make another video with regression after lunch. In that I'll try to cover lasso and all of that. I might not. It's super tough. Okay, cool. Cool guys.